Hey YouTubers, calling from Portland, Maine again. Uh-oh, what's going on today? Alright, so I just bought a $500, a sweet 46-inch Husqvarna riding lawnmower. I took a risk, it wasn't starting, and bottom line is it ends up having some valve issues. Particularly the push rods, of course, were bent, which I started to panic because it's a little more in-depth than I do. But after looking at some YouTube stuff, I was like, wow, this is pretty straightforward. And I found, in worst case, I can replace the whole head pretty easy. And I got a price at $170 from a local small engine shop. But anyway, so until I actually replaced the head, I got a couple of new push rods. And I just wanted to show something that worked for me, getting the push rod out. My issue was that the actual bushing, the valve bushing, of course, pushed out. It's kind of a common thing. If it overheats, the bushing can stick to the valve and come out. Let me show you what it is and what I found to be working for me so far. I haven't actually got it replaced yet, but I'm well on my way. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So what we have is, I think you can see it, this bushing right there, it was way out here. See how that one is? That's correct, that one's in deeper, but this one should be nearly flush to the cylinder head right there. So I'm pretty well on my way. This is the bushing here. But what I did was, so I had this situation right here with, so basically I took off that, pretty straightforward, and you'll end up with, but ultimately, just obviously the spring, and there's a couple of wedge pieces in there that hold that disc onto the valve stem. But the problem was I couldn't push it in, this one, because that was so far out. That bushing was so far out I could barely push it in. They didn't have room to get the, I can't remember what they're called, I'm sorry. They're just two little half slices that go in there, wedges. So I was like, well, all right, how's this gonna work? And what I said, well, let me give it a shot. And what I used, hold on. It worked like a champ. I just took a basic spark plug socket. I'm sorry for the camera, guys. I'm just kind of doing this on the fly here as we go, but just to give you the idea. Basically, I put it over the top of that spring was there. It'd be like this one up here. I just set it over the top of it and pounded on it with a hammer, basically light, medium weight. Obviously you wail on it, but just enough so it started to move. And I ultimately got it so that bushing slid in far enough that I could actually push in the spring and actually take out the wedges. So, and took the spring off, and this is what I had. But this bushing was out here further still, quite a ways. I was like, well, let me just use this. I was going to use a punch and try to tap on the left and right, and that really wasn't, what you really need is even pressure. I said, well, why can't I just put this little, you don't want to push the valve inside there, but basically that slides right over that. And then I just proceeded to do the same thing. Now there's no spring, and just put the socket over it, and just tap, and I'm over halfway there. So versus I'd be concerned if I tapped on either side, you could ding it and gouge it, and or get an uneven push, so that the actual valve spring disc, it doesn't look like it's damaged or anything. It seems fine. Let me pull it down. So basically, obviously that fits over it perfectly, and I'm gonna be on my way. My understanding is that there is a seat, so you can't drive the bushing too far. It'll seat in there at some point, and then I'm just gonna put it back together. So, but that was critical. Again, I had an issue because the bushing was so far out, I could barely push a spring in, and it would bottom out. You can't get the wedges out to get the spring off, and or the disc. So that's what I got going on. This is actually a 22 horsepower Briggs V-twin Intek. It's most of the valves are all the size. They seem to be pretty similar in concept. So seems to be working for me. I'm pretty happy so far. Not that it's gonna. Then I got to do the adjustments, obviously, and it looks like ranges 5,000s, 4,000, 5,000s to 7,000s, but that's based on your manufacturers. I haven't got to that level yet of the specs, but it looks like that's a general range. Pretty basic, pretty easy, and hopefully it gets going. And the issue was that ultimately, even though the pushover is totally out, it turns over really slow, and I always thought it was like, well, it's in the starter, the battery, the regulator. No, ultimately, if the valves aren't adjusted right, I guess it builds up compression. It's hard for the battery to push enough power through to turn it over. So it's a really, slow. It struggles. It's a slow start. So once they're adjusted correctly, then the valves are set so that the engine can, compress and decompress as it's supposed to. So, anyways, from Portland, Maine, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful. If you're not living in New England, I don't know what ails you. All right, take care. Go get them. Later.